Hi, my dear friends, some words of Torah for Parshas Vayishlach. Does man truly possess free will? Or are we, as many social scientists suggest today, a product of a series of events that have occurred in our lives and various natures and dispositions that we are born with? Can man truly be held responsible for the choices he or she makes? And I quote from an article: at least since the Enlightenment in the 18th century, one of the most central questions of human existence has been whether we have free will. In the late 20th century, some thought neuroscience had settled the question. However, as it has recently become clear, such was not the case. The elusive answer is nonetheless foundational to our moral codes, criminal justice system, religion, and even to the very meaning of life itself. For if every event of life is merely the predictable outcome of mechanical laws, one may question the point of it all. The modern day Acher, Yuval Harari, has argued that free will is a myth invented by religion. And he writes that theologians developed the idea of free will to explain why God is right to punish sinners for their bad choices and reward saints for their good choices. If our choices aren't made freely, why should God punish or reward us for them? To prove this is false, Harari argues, and I quote, this myth has little to do with what science now teaches us about Homo sapiens and other animals. You cannot decide what desires you have. You don't decide to be introvert or extrovert, easygoing or anxious, gay or straight. Humans make choices, but they are never independent choices. Every choice depends on a lot of biological, social, and personal conditions that you cannot determine for yourself. I can choose what to eat, whom to marry, and whom to vote for, but these choices are determined in part by my genes, my biochemistry, my gender, my family background, my national culture, etc. And I didn't choose what genes or family to have, end quote. Now, of course, Harari's argument against free will is predicated on the assumption that religion defines free will as all people are equal in their respective dispositions to countless different good versus bad choices. But that was never the definition of free will in classical Jewish literature. Rather, free will simply means that despite one's unique dispositions, be they biological, social, or personal conditions, no one forces a human being to act upon that which God defines as prohibited behavior. It may be more difficult for one person to resist the temptation to a particular illegal act over another. For example, some people find the urge to shoplift overpowering, while others recoil at the prospect. But in the end, we all can choose, through proper discipline and conditioning, to resist even the strongest of urges. It may very well be that our patriarch Yaakov struggled with this idea. It would appear that his brother Esav had already resigned himself to act upon his impulses. When given the opportunity to choose the immediate gratification of a meal versus maintaining his firstborn role as the moral leader of the family, Esav abdicated the latter with the argument, Hine anochi holech lamut v'lamazeli bechora, which we may translate as, all of us, whether saint or sinner, end up in the same place anyway, dead. Why should I maintain this position of moral authority if morality is an illusion and there is no free will? He gave in to the urge for food and lived for the instant gratification of the moment. Esav's very name, Esav, which is also like the word asui, implies completed and fixed in one's nature, devoid of the opportunity to change. This is exactly what Harari would have us do, revert back to our Esav impulses. It may very well be that 20 years later, Yaakov would be filled with a great doubt in our Parsha. Perhaps my brother Esav was right after all. And as the Torah says, Vayivater Yaakov levado, Vayeavek ish imo ad alot hashachar. The Torah describes how Yaakov, returning to Eretz Yisrael, prepared to confront his brother. He sent his family ahead and then remained alone in the darkness, devoid of his family, his support system, and left alone to his thoughts. He began to question the last 2 decades of his life and the precarious future he now faced. I've lived my life with the conviction that there is absolute right and wrong, And yet Lavan seems to flourish with impunity despite his sinister behavior. Esav has amassed great wealth, living the life of someone who follows his impulses, and those same bloodthirsty impulses may impel him to kill me. Struggling with these doubts manifests in a wrestling match with an angel, a being who, according to our sages, doesn't even possess free will. Our sages also teach us that this was Esav's angel who, over the course of this dark night, tries to convince Yaakov that free will is indeed an illusion. But Yaakov resists and remembers that Hashem appeared to him and promised him divine protection. He remembers the ladder ascending to heaven, representing the opportunity that man has through his free will choices to ascend or descend, to become close or distant from God. Seeing that he cannot defeat Yaakov, the angel touches Yaakov's sciatic nerve, which runs opposite his loins, representing the greatest biological urge that humans possess. This proves to be Yaakov's weak spot, in that there are times in life when man feels powerless to resist his sexual urges. But even that injury to Yaakov's belief in free will does not last long. Man may succumb temporarily, but eventually can overcome even the strongest of urges once he sees the light of day. This is why, as the dawn breaks, Yaakov is initially limping, but then the sun heals him of the injury to his loins, as described in the Midrash. The angel thus awards Yaakov his new name, Yisrael, meaning the man who struggles with God and with man, and eventually emerges victorious. Yes, Yaakov, sometimes the urges are overbearing, but you have demonstrated that you do have free will, and you can conquer your demons. Indeed, this is why we are called Bnei Yisrael, the children of the struggler, because free will is the very basis of our entire faith. Let Esav continue believing in his deterministic urges as the guide to his life. You and your descendants will have a higher calling. Your virtue will undermine Esav's whole belief system. At different times in history, he will hate you for it and will try to destroy you for proving him wrong. For you will remind him that no matter how sophisticated he can articulate his argument, you demonstrate that man can always overcome the evil within. We have been dealing with the problem of free will for time immemorial. The problem persists today, and we occasionally, sadly, must face yet another scandal of a rabbi or other religious or community leader who stands accused of being a sexual predator. If the accusers are proven correct, the perpetrator and his behavior must be condemned in the strongest of terms. No matter how tormented the individual may be by his demons, no one can claim to be frum and yet repeatedly succumb to their baser impulses. We can only hope that the damage caused by this latest shocking expose will not further erode the faith that we and our children have placed in our rabbinic leaders. We continue to try our best to counteract these kinds of scandalous stories with efforts that will demonstrate that man does indeed possess the free will and moral courage to behave kindly and morally with others, and to not exploit one's position of power and privilege. We may limp from such an experience, but the dawn eventually heals even the deepest of wounds. That is our hope, and this is our prayer. May we truly experience the healing power of the day when all evil will be eradicated, and we will feel the soothing rays of light emanating from the Messianic age. May we see it, dear friends, very soon. B'mheira b'yameinu, amen. And here's wishing you a beautiful Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom and Mevorach. Blessings to you and your entire family.